Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hello and welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson, and I'm going to be talking about the temptation to be your old self. Now, before I get to that, I am going to share with you that I am in partnership with Care Of. Now, Care Of is a subscription service that delivers vitamins and supplements which are customized for your specific health needs. You take a short quiz, answer a few questions about your diet, lifestyle, fitness, and health goals, and Care Of will put together a personalized plan for you. Now, I will talk about that a little bit more after the first segment. Oh, and to also mention that in the promo code, I can get you 20% off if you mention the word relationship. Again, I'll talk about that a little more after the first segment. Now, the temptation to be your old self. I'm going to dive right into this. And it's pretty strong when what you remember are the good times. Now, recalling what became a catalyst for change in the mind may fail to bring forth at that moment of temptation what it is that you needed to remember to keep you on your path. Now, it's the distinctions which are subtle, and for some it's not so subtle. That's the product of your experience of life. Now, if you take, for example, the temptation to reconnect with a toxic friend or ex-lover. With the ex-lover, the passion may be off the charts, yet the relationship and everything else connected with it is fairly painful. And the compatibility in other areas really doesn't exist. Or, said differently, at that moment of temptation, they are painfully absent. So it's hard for you to remember why, at least at that moment, why you made change or why that person is your ex. Now, with a friend, you may feel the fun starts when the friend steps in, but what happens as a result, it could be hard to bury the past when things keep reappearing that remind you of the unpleasantness that you sought to distance yourself from. So, in other words, that friend shows up and you're having all kinds of fun, but at the end of that fun, there is some sort of event that happens that reminds you that, wow, this person, they're not really safe to be around. Either you wind up spending the money that you can't afford to spend because they talk you into it, or you wind up going places that you don't belong. Those sorts of things, and they leave a bad experience on you. Now, I will call those events. Now, sometimes we simply ignore our past as if to say, I will not be defined by it. Now that works when you are trying to do self-improvement. And by self-improvement, you're dealing with, say, past failures, and you won't stop from wanting to better yourself, because if you think of them as past failures, and if you let failures stop you from trying to improve yourself, then you're sort of dead in the water. So you get how the mind works in those cases. And when you're dealing with something in that level, that's called courage. You're facing your past. You're facing your fears. You're facing those kinds of things which have held you back. See, that's courage. Now, if you're facing the possibility of defeat, and by saying no to stopping and yes to growing, again, that is what I call courage. Now, the contrary is the kind of denial that traps us into the dysfunctional relationships. And seemingly when we engage in them, we don't better the situation. We merely add to that what is destined to take us down that, that rocky road that we were on before, which was probably something that wanted to tell us, hey, you need to change. Now, I think one of the chief reasons we revisit the past is because we want to reinvent ourselves. I think we want to rewrite our history. And that's a very powerful thing to want to do, because if we rewrite it, then we can sort of erase it. We conquer that fear which made us feel weak, and it allows us to move on. That's again how the mind works. But what I tend to call an event, I don't call it a mistake, I call it an event. And I think the wording is important, because when we hear the word mistake, we automatically want to reach back and fix it. I think we're called to do that, but just that's how we're wired. But if we call it an event, then it's almost as if, like, you're driving down the road, you see something that happens on the side of the road. Maybe people pulled over because there was a car accident. Oh, there was an event, and you just keep going. You don't try to go back and fix that. You just tend to keep going on about your way. I mean, you may rubberneck for a little while, but you tend to go on. You see, we call those events. We don't try to reconnect with those. It's just something that happens. Our fix-it doesn't kick in. We don't feel like we have to fix a mistake, which I like to think of when we have a mistake. There are some things that really should be as part of the leave alone. Remember the example that I gave with the friend who takes you someplace that you shouldn't be, you don't belong, that's not your kind of thing to do. And you say, oh, it was a mistake for me to come here. Well, it was an event, but there's a whole lot of leave alone with that, and let's just go on about our way. The fix-it response seems to be less riskier, because it seems that there is a pleasure associated with the end result. There's a perceived success when you fix it and you're done with it. That's a lot of times what you're shooting for. And remember that when you're fixing a mistake, you're trying to rewrite your history as if the mistake didn't happen. But I liken to think that when we have something, say, what we call a mistake, if it were a mistake that you fell off a cliff, I don't think that you would go fall off a cliff again to try to fix that mistake. No, you would leave it alone. You're done. And you have to learn to see things that clearly. Make those distinctions for yourself. And when you approach these situations, approach them with the wisdom that that's a leave alone. Now, I had to think about all of this because when, in my own experience, at that moment of temptation, what am I going to recall? I'm going to probably recall everything that makes me want to do it. Maybe not the stuff that says, hey, this is dangerous, don't do it. It makes me want to do it. And how do I navigate that? And I think the way that worked for me is when I would journal. Because when I'm journaling, I'm writing what's going on for me at that moment. However I remember it, at least I'm writing it at that moment. And I'm not depending upon my recall of situations, of life's events, of some of those leave alone things. I don't just reinvent them in my head and then create this romantic notion that, oh, this is going to be great. When they're leave alones, they're leave alones. But by journaling, I write down what is going on for me and sort of cement it at least the way I'm writing it. Now, I may come back and add something that I might have left off. But in that moment, at least I'm writing what I think is closer to fact. Because what happens over time is that the memory degrades. The memories degrade. You don't remember a lot of the details. So by putting it in my form of journaling, then it tends to retain. And I can come back and read that. And it's interesting how much of that stuff then stays in your own head, because remember, it's your own story. It's part of my own DNA. Hey, look, I'm going to take a break right now, and I will come back and talk about this some more. Hello there, listeners. This is John from the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast, and I want to talk to you about Care Of. I'm partnering with them to bring information about a subscription service that delivers vitamins and supplements which are customized to your specific health needs. Look, you just take a short quiz, you answer a few questions about your diet, your lifestyle, your fitness and health goals, and Care Of will put together a personalized plan just for you. So with summer approaching, and if you make health and wellness a priority again, Care Of can make it easy to upgrade your health routine. Give yourself support this season with a boost. Now, whether you're looking for energy, better sleep, to deal with the stress, or something else to help you feel your healthiest, Care Of has you take an online quiz, and they'll let you know exactly what you need. The online quiz asks you about your diet, your health goals, your lifestyle choices, and it takes about 5 minutes to find out. Now, it's a scientifically backed vitamin and supplement recommendation. So you answer the questions like how much sleep you're getting. Are you looking for more energy? Do you need something to support your weight management or healthy hair, skin, and nails? See, it really gets personalized. And it's also easy and convenient because it could be really hard to know what vitamins or supplements that you should be taking. But Care Of will make it easy to find out what you specifically need to be your healthiest. Now, Care Of delivers daily vitamin and supplement packs, and they're all customized to your recommendations. So you're only taking what you really need. Now, depending upon your personalized Care Of plan, you'll get these daily vitamin packs or protein powders, and they'll be sent right to your door. Now, it's so cute and customized. See, the packets even say your name on them. So here's another thing. Now, you can modify your subscription at any time when your needs or preferences change. So now this is the Care Of difference. Now, they make sure that what you're putting into your body comes from the best backed sources and backed by honest guidance and transparency. Now, it's all available to you from their website. Care Of also offers protein powders, and they're available in individual on-the-go packets or in tubs. And again, they're all personalized to your fitness goals and dietary preferences. The individually wrapped vitamin packets are now made from compostable plant-based film that meet the same safety standards. So your vitamins are not only kept fresh, but they are also better for the environment. Now, vegan and vegetarian supplement options are also available to match your dietary needs and to ensure that you're getting the nutrients you need for those specific diets. Now, I myself took the quiz, and I had some specific things that I wanted. I talked about memory. I wanted to have something for my joints and so on. And I have in my possession a customized set of vitamins that I take, and I found the quiz easy to take. They delivered them right to my door. It made it convenient. It's got my name on it. I really enjoy the convenience of this. You see, I'm the kind of guy, if I go into a vitamin store, I don't know that I know enough about things to be able to select the right things for me. But by having taken the Care Of quiz, it made it much simpler for me. And like I said, they deliver it right to your door. Now, here's something else I want to add. If you go to their website, which is takecareof.com, and enter the promo code relationship, you're going to get 20% off your first order. I'm going to say that again. You go to the website takecareof.com, and in the promo code, enter the word relationship, and you're going to get 20% off. So you get that healthy routine, the online quiz. It's easy and convenient. And I like to say that this is the Care Of difference. So you do that, put relationship in the promo code, and you're going to get 20% off. I think that's a great deal. Give it a try.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello and welcome back to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson, and I've been talking about the temptation to be your old self. Now, I find this particular topic interesting because, it affects me just like it does anyone else, and sometimes we forget the lessons that we've learned in life. If just as simple enough to say it, when you've lived a while, there are things that you probably don't do, and you don't even remember why. Because you've just moved on. When certain things seem like they have some air of familiarity to you, then maybe you reach back and try it. Maybe, like when you're a guy, you played high school football and you think later on, and even though you've had no athletic training years down the road, you think you can still be that guy who ran down the field and scored touchdowns. Well, what do? You slip and you twist your ankle, or you hurt your knee, and you come limping into work on the morning, and it's like, okay, what happened? Well, you were reliving your youth, your dreams. I think we all have that tendency to do that. And when it comes to that experience of, and again, I use the temptation to be your old self, and this is to try to grow past some of the toxic relationships that you may have had, and to keep from being hooked back into those. Now, in my last podcast on relationships, I talked about toxic people and some of the ways in which they hook themselves into you and how you get caught up in those circumstances, and how easy it is to be seduced by some of the things that they say to you. Whether it's out of fear, whether it's because it's familiar and you think that, okay, well, this is the only safe place to be. Like I said, that podcast, I cover a lot of things. And, domestic violence situations have a lot of that kind of toxicity in them. It's where people become afraid to speak out. You get cut off from things that you're familiar with, and thereby the person who's being abusive winds up having control over you. And it's amazing that those situations, in the minds of people that don't experience it, they always say, well, why didn't you just leave? Why didn't you just get away? Well, until you've been in a situation like that, it is really hard to imagine that one can be imprisoned in such a way. But it's part of it is the mental thing. And then when people like that are in your life, they can be very terrifying. And it brings up a lot of fear to try to leave that situation. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. And, we do hear about situations such as domestic violence where people, bad things happen to people who did try to escape. So it becomes very, very scary. And it's that thing that happens. So it's hard to leave. You don't want to stay, but you don't know what else to do. So again, that's the toxic relations podcast, and I did that before. I think that's episode 212 if you're looking for it. But in this particular thing, I'm talking about the temptation to be your old self and how some of those things that we relate to in the past, they were toxic. We found some way to get ourselves away from them, and we forget. And I talked about journaling as a way to track your own history. And if you do it as you're going, I know many people are not into writing diaries or journaling or anything like that, But that's a tool that I use to keep track of my own growth. And I think that's important for me, because if I feel like I'm being stagnant, or maybe here's the opposite, maybe I don't feel like I'm giving myself enough credit for the work that I've done. And that's a way to kind of go back and reread how far I've come. And there's a lot of validation in that. You may not get that from somebody else, but you may have to give it to yourself. And if you're writing it down as you're struggling with it, then that's a good way to keep track of things. Look, I got to take a break here, but I'm going to come back and talk about this a bit more.
The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast, the show that gives you advice on everything travel. We explore places you've always wanted to go, as well as giving tips for traveling in those places. We'll give you advice on the best sites for travel tips, information, and discounts. Join us as we travel the world, explore cultures, and meet new people. The Golden State Media Concepts Travel Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Travel Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar. GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hello, and welcome back to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson, talking about how to move ahead. I've been talking about the subject of the temptation of being your old self and staying ahead of that. Now, when I left off in the last segment, I was talking about journaling and how important that is. It's a way for me to reflect on what's happened at various stages of my life. I always write down a date and a time just for keeping the chronology straight. But revisiting my experiences in my own time goes a lot to helping me keep straight my story about how far I've come. Because there are a lot of people that don't know what you go through. No, I don't write in my journal to share it necessarily with anyone in particular other than myself, but to be able to reflect on the things that I may have felt like I didn't do very well at or not such good choices, and to want to do better, but then also remember to appreciate myself for the hard work. A lot of people don't know what you go through. Only you do. And a lot of my life, I looked for validation outside, meaning for people to give me praise, to recognize what it is that I do. It's nice when you get ribbons and trophies and attaboys and things from people. But for some of us, those things are few and far between. No matter how big the effort that we make. You could work at a job for 20, 30 years and not receive a lot of recognition. So, but what you hope is that at the end of that time period that, you have a decent retirement, that you've saved up money, you've done the things that matter to you. And I know a lot of people, we don't necessarily work a particular job for the money. We work there because we like working there. And that in and of itself means a lot. That's how I choose to work in the places that I work. But when it comes to reflecting on being able to appreciate yourself, what do we generally go on? Sometimes we have a moment where we can relate to something that somebody else said to us, meaning they might be talking about something that's important to them, and then you recall where, oh, yeah, I kind of did the same thing, and you're kind of sharing a feel-good moment right there. Those happen. Those are great. But if it comes to reflecting on your accomplishments in your own space, what tends to drive those thoughts? And it's probably whatever mood you're in. If you're in a good mood, then your mind is flooded with lots of things that make you happy. But if you're not feeling that, for whatever reason, maybe you didn't have enough to eat today, something else may have happened, somebody may have said something that was really a downer, you may have seen something that happened that wasn't so nice. See, all of these kinds of things affect your mood. But that doesn't change what you've accomplished, because that's already a part of your life's experience. That's already a part of your history. Sometimes we have to figure out a way in which we can reconnect with that, reach back, and give ourselves the pat on the back. Now, this is a whole different thing than from stroking the ego. That's different. That's a different thing. Sometimes appreciating the self is something we have to learn to do, because validation doesn't necessarily come from other people. And in the example that I was giving about toxic individuals, it'll come from them, but that's because they want something from you, not just simply to say, hey, you did a great job. So those are the kinds of situations you want to be careful about. So like I said, you can track things, even if it's selective. Again, I write a date and time on it so that I can keep up with it. I like to say that recollection comes and goes with whatever catalyzes a memory, and that can change and not to be realized again. So writing things down helps give it reference. And I write my own history, and sometimes it takes planning and discipline, but it's worth it. It's worth it to remember who you are, the things that you've done that matter to you, because we're not going to always remember those things in an instant. But having those moments where we can reach back and read about our own history, I mean, there's got to be some feel-good moments in that. There's a lot of do-overs in that kind of thing. Now, I'll read it over and over again like a good book. Now, if you ever get to a place where you want to share something like that with someone who's really special, and it's quite nice. I can recall having an opportunity to share some good memories with a significant other. And I would recall things because of a similar story that was being told. And I said, oh, well, that was their story of it, and here's an experience that I had. And being able to go back and retell it or read it from close to when that moment happened is almost like being there for the person that's listening. It's like happening in real time almost, and it's really fascinating. I mean, I can't say that I'm a great storyteller, but when I've had the opportunity to share from my own story like that, it's really made me seem like I'm special, at least to the person I'm reading it to. And it sort of gives them a window to my life and helps them feel special to me because I'm sharing, those intimate details. And even if it's from something that we might call a failure, something that we didn't do so well, the fact that you're open and honest and you're just, laying it all bare, that's pretty cool. That takes courage. And you know what? Living life takes courage. Being involved in it, being invested. And that's what I want you to do, is be invested in your life. And the temptation to be your old self is always out there. But I want you to be your best self, and however that can be. I'm John Johnson. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.